to a bohemian family in New York City, Robert De Niro dropped out of high school to pursue the life of an actor. But his earliest role in a small-budget film called The Wedding Party did little to advance his career.
Everything didn't come as easy to De Niro as people think. He wasn't just born a movie star. He didn't just start acting. A lot of it was hard work at the beginning.
He wanted to put his face out there, so he was just out there auditioning for everything he possibly could.
By 1969, 26-year-old Robert had appeared in a handful of obscure films, including a second collaboration with director Brian De Palma, an art house drama called Greetings. Neither made much of an impact. But a more prominent role would come courtesy of an old acting school classmate.
One of his fellow students was friends with the actress Shelley Winters. So this friend of Shelley Winters says, you need to meet this De Niro kid. He's something to notice.
Shelley Winters was a two-time Oscar winner who befriended De Niro and really was an early mentor and supporter of him.
She liked being a godmother. She was a very extravagant, extroverted character, and I think she loved cultivating young actors and bucking them up.
She was one of many people who championed him early on, and without all of those champions, he might not have found himself in the right place at the right time to show off that talent and succeed.
In 1969, Winters was preparing to work with B-movie director Roger Corman on the film Bloody Mama. As it turned out, Corman was still trying to fill the small but critical role of Winters' drug-addicted son, Lloyd.
Shelley Winters suggests De Niro for the part of one of her sons, and he tested for Corman and got the part.
But after accepting the role, the actor who would be known for his calculating approach to roles and intensive preparation was strangely unprepared for a pivotal scene.
There's a scene where they're escaping, he's driving the car, and Shelley Winters is shooting out the window, and Roger Corman stopped it afterwards and said, the car was shaking all over the place. Why is it so out of control? He said, because I don't know how to drive. I never had a license.
Released in 1970, Bloody Mama became a cult favorite. It might not have been a commercial hit, but a buzz was building about De Niro.
He acted in a lot of really bad movies and a lot of low-budget movies, but everybody who knew him knew that he was going to break through. The only question was when.
His growing reputation opened up a new opportunity, one that had the potential to transform the little-known De Niro into a star.
The book, Godfather, was a big bestseller. Everybody was dying to know, how the film would be made and who would play who, and, there was a great deal of anticipation about it.
The Godfather told the story of an aging crime boss passing the reins to his son. Director Francis Ford Coppola cast a wide net to fill the film's pivotal role of Michael Corleone.
There was a cattle call in the world of Hollywood cinema, and probably beyond, for anyone who could potentially be Italian.
De Niro, of course, being a guy who's had a little film work, got an audition.
This was obviously going to be the film. That's why he was able to get Brando for the lead. And for the young parts, Sonny and Michael, the young actors all wanted Al Pacino. Sylvester Stallone begged to be given any part in the film. Stallone says that he even offered, if they wouldn't give him a part, clean up afterwards. The notion was that whoever got those roles in the movie would be set up as the upcoming great actor stars of the 70s.
De Niro was up for the Michael Corleone role and also possibly Sonny Corleone. He was one of several actors that Coppola was considering. It was Al Pacino, James Caan, and Robert De Niro.
Landing the high-profile role of Michael could be just the catalyst De Niro needed to kickstart his career. But the casting didn't quite work out that way.
They settled on Pacino as Michael. They settled on James Caan as Sonny. And De Niro was sort of left out of the mix after investing a lot of time and energy and kind of feeling like he really had a lot to contribute. But, it wasn't in the cards.
Coppola really knew in his mind that he already wanted Pacino and James Caan for those roles. So when he saw De Niro, I'm sure he liked his audition, but he already had his Michael and Sonny.
They offered De Niro a smaller role in The Godfather, the Poligato role.
It was a much smaller kind of supporting role. It wasn't Michael, the lead, and it wasn't even anything that he was all that compelled to do, and so he just turned it down to do this movie instead called The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight.
The lead actor on that film, who actually at the time was Pacino, bailed to do The Godfather, so that opened up a role, and De Niro took that.
When The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight and The Godfather appeared in America's movie theaters, it looked like De Niro's gamble was a bust.
The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight was a bomb, and of course The Godfather was a classic.
The movie becomes the biggest movie of the year, arguably the biggest movie of the decade. And there's De Niro going, okay, maybe shouldn't have passed on that one.
I can imagine that De Niro probably was a little disappointed. He probably thought he made a mistake, but for him, as a guy who's really just a working actor, he thought, well, I can take a small, minor bit role, or I can take a lead role, and you really can't criticize that decision. I mean, guy's gotta work.
As 1972 drew to a close, 29-year-old Robert De Niro watched his first leading role in a major movie tank. But an old acquaintance from the neighborhood was about to resurface and put Bobby's career back on track. In 1972, 29-year-old Robert De Niro passed up a chance to work on the year's most celebrated film, The Godfather. His first major feature faltered at the box office, and his promising career was off to a rocky start. But his personal life got a boost at a local restaurant where he met Diane Abbott.
Diane Abbott was a very beautiful fashion model who was interested in everything from jazz to acting, and De Niro and she crossed paths.
She was a waitress at a restaurant in New York, and he just kept asking her out, and she was sort of like, no, really, no. He became increasingly persistent until she finally agreed.
There was something about her talent and her beauty that made him realize that she was a person he wanted to share his life with.
The relationship quickly grew serious. De Niro and Abbott moved into De Niro's New York apartment, and in 1976, they were married.
She had a child from a previous relationship, and when they got married, De Niro adopted that child, and then they also had a child together in the first year of their marriage.
De Niro was about to forge a professional partnership as well. He'd been friends with Brian De Palma since working on the director's student film in 1963. In 1972, De Palma introduced Robert to another filmmaker who would help shape the rest of his life.
De Palma and De Niro had remained friends, and he introduced him to a 30-year-old director who turned out to be Martin Scorsese.
Martin Scorsese was friends with Brian De Palma. The three of them are at a neighborhood Christmas party.
And Scorsese takes one look at him and says, I know you. I know you. And De Niro looks back and says, I don't know you. And Scorsese says, didn't you used to hang out on Hester Street all the time? Yeah, you were the kid they called Bobby Milk with his pallid complexion. And De Niro says, that was me. And they start talking about Hester Street and the village and Little Italy, and they became very, very friendly.
In 1972, Martin Scorsese was a New York filmmaker who'd earned some recognition for his indie feature Boxcar Bertha. Martin hoped his next film, Mean Streets, would establish his reputation as a director on the rise.
Mean Streets, it revolves around a bar in Lower Manhattan and about sort of these characters who have these interlocking kind of connections.
It takes place in Little Italy. It's about a hood trying to make it on the streets.
Scorsese gets the green light to make the film, and he's looking at actors, and he remembers this energy of this De Niro kid and talks to him about a part, and it ends up being Johnny Boy.
When 29-year-old De Niro took on the volatile role of Johnny Boy, Scorsese had no idea just how intense his young discovery would be.
He plays the craziest, most out of control of the Little Italy tough guys in that film.
One of the things on Mean Streets that people got to know, especially people that work with De Niro, was learning how method he was. Even when the cameras weren't rolling, he would stay in character. And a lot of that realism comes through, where you're actually somewhat terrified of this character. And that is exactly what he was trying to bring to this movie.
For moviegoers, Robert's intensity translated into a performance like no other.
Mean Streets is really one of the great announcements in Hollywood history that a powerful new young actor had really arrived. De Niro's first appearance as Johnny Boy, he puts a bomb in a mailbox and then kind of shambles up the street, and then the bomb explodes. As far as we can tell, he may have just done this for kicks, which is a completely psychotic thing to do. He shows you in the space of a couple of seconds that this guy, who might be a complete psycho, is also full of these demons.
Chosen to close the 1973 New York Film Festival, Mean Streets played to rave reviews. It fared far worse at the box office. But for De Niro, it opened new doors, including a second chance at an opportunity he'd missed years ago.
One of the best things that happened to De Niro was also pretty horrible in a sense. He was cast in the first Godfather. You know, he ended up doing a different movie.
Coppola was scouting around for young Vito for Godfather 2. I'm sure he remembered De Niro, and by that point he had seen him in Mean Streets and knew that that was the right guy for the role.
He said I can use him in the flashback scenes to play the young Marlon Brando, and obviously it was a great combination and it worked really well, and it allowed De Niro to have much more of a marquee role than he would have had if he had done the first Godfather.
It was a great chance for me, and with Coppola at that time, absolutely, yeah, that was great for me.
This time, De Niro's method acting took him across the globe to prepare for the role.
He had to speak a lot of his dialogue in Sicilian. He went over to Sicily and he learned the dialects and he got it down pat.
Released on December 20th, 1974, The Godfather Part 2 was an instant critical and commercial success.
If Mean Streets put Robert De Niro on the map, Godfather Part 2 made him the map. And that's what made him truly a superstar as a character actor.
Better yet, The Godfather Part 2 earned the 31-year-old De Niro an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. After 11 feature films, he'd finally achieved a commercial and critical breakthrough. But on the night of the Oscars ceremony,
De Niro didn't even show up. He was against Fred Astaire. He thought there's no chance I'm going to beat this guy. He's the sentimental favorite.
He's up against Lee Strasberg, his acting coach, and Fred Astaire, who was nominated for Towering Inferno. He's pretty damn sure he's not going to have a chance.
But Bobby was in for a surprise on Oscar night.
He wins. He's not there for the biggest win of his life, and Francis Ford Coppola has to hop up on stage and accept for him.
Robert De Niro had finally made a name for himself as an actor of great depth and intensity. But in his quest for realism, De Niro would push his body to new limits and frighten his own co-stars.